Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Transfer Daily Show here on Haters TV. Our look at some of the biggest transfer stories doing the rounds at the moment. And we are delighted to be joined by Gooner Talk TV extraordinaire and Football London chief Arsenal writer, Tom Canton. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom.
Of course. How you doing, guys? You good?
Yes, really good, thanks. And also joined, of course, by Haters TV legend and ever-present Nick Callow.
Legend, fantastic, ever-present. And sort of our Arsenal correspondent as well, Dan. So
yes.
It's great to have Tom on. I guess we're going to do a bit of an Arsenal special today, are we?
I think so. I think that's that best bet, isn't it, to look at some of the biggest news. Arsenal, well, since you went away, Tom, and come back, things have really blown up. So maybe you should be looking to go away more often.
Yeah, twice. It's weird. I was away last weekend just for a couple of days in the New Forest, came back, and then all of a sudden we announced Zubimendi and Gyokeres kicks off. So yeah, it's. I'm just going to speak to Football London and say I think I should be going on holiday every weekend. So
I think that's got to be done, isn't it? It's got to be done.
Well, maybe Arsenal can sponsor you to go on holiday and help get deals over the line.
Maybe.
What used to happen to me earlier in my career, if I went away, a big signing was made. Is this one of the things? So maybe you've taken over that mantle.
Maybe. I mean, me and Andrea Berta have been sitting in the same room, so that rumour can be put to bed. You know, it's not a mask or anything like that.
So even non-Arsenal fans, I think, are interested in Arsenal anyway, where they're sort of mocking them or one way or another. So I think Arsenal is an interesting topic, whether you're an Arsenal fan or not. There's been a lot of movement this week with Zubimendi and Gyokeres, but I'd like to kick off asking about a player who's already at the club. We saw Mars Lewis-Skelly signing this sort of impressive new 5-year contract very recently. And I think everyone's expecting his mate and partner in sort of Arsenal Hell End Academy crime, Ethan Nwaneri, to quickly follow suit, but it's not happened yet. What's your sort of take on the situation with young Nwaneri?
Yeah, I genuinely think there's something regarding this story of exaggeration would probably be the word I use, and it being blown somewhat out of proportion. I think a lot of the delay in terms of kind of the contract situation has been affected by the fact that Nwaneri's been playing with England's under-21s at the European Championships, of which he brought home, of course, a winner's medal. He wasn't a regular starter, but he was regularly involved from the bench in that team. And I think with him returning, of course, with a delayed return compared to many of his Arsenal teammates, those discussions will then take a lot more of a positive turn. Yes, there's interest from other clubs, of course. He's only got a year left on his current deal because obviously you can only sign a limited length of deal at the young age where he signed his pro contract. So I don't think there's as much jeopardy as maybe has been kind of like banded around and concerned by Arsenal fans. Overall, I think it's heading in a positive direction.
Yeah, I don't know who was responsible for it, but I think what got Arsenal fans a little bit twitchy was when these Madueke links became concrete, and there was a story of all Chelsea saying, "Well, look, if you take Madueke, we wouldn't mind Ethan Nwaneri if he's available," and that wouldn't have gone down too well, or would it?
No, but I don't think that's unusual, for a club to start asking about players potentially that they might be willing to part with if it brings down a potential price tag. It's a negotiation; it happens very regularly, and also, Madueke is seen, even if Madueke was to arrive at Arsenal, the club very much, to my mind and my understanding, view him as an 8 or a 10, more of a central player than as a wide right player, where Madueke would be seen more so as a backup option to Saka and to provide competition and cover there, but also can cover on the left-hand side. Whereas Nwaneri's future is very much seen more centrally than it is in those wide areas.
And very much at Arsenal, but as you're reading, okay. So that's a very positive one. What else is going on? I mean, the Gyokeres deal is going to happen, will happen. What's your take on that?
Well, in the world of transfers, saying things like "it will happen" puts you out on a bit of a precipice at times. But I would say that it's certainly heading in the direction of feeling confident that he will arrive. I mean, certainly Gyokeres really wants this move to happen. He's very much keen on it. I think maybe that's part of the difference, and maybe part of the ease in which Arsenal found to switch tact from Benjamin Sesko so swiftly and so early. I know fans will say the window's felt like it's gone on for ages, but it's only July 8th and the players aren't officially back from pre-season training until this week. So the fact that they've moved from their preferred target in Benjamin Sesko, who RB Leipzig held out for a fee that Arsenal were never going to pay. And with Gyokeres pining, for a move to Arsenal, I think that's helped them. And, not just the fact that he wants to move, but the fact that he's got an excellent record in Sporting. We all know how many goals he scored, how frequently he gets on the score sheet. And he's played against Arsenal, so Arteta's had first-hand experience of his qualities. I thought he had a good game, despite the fact his Sporting side were roundly beaten by Arsenal that game. But, yeah, I think that it's finally ending that hunt for a centre forward that Arsenal have so desperately needed. And I'm excited to see. Sesko was my preferred choice, but it's not to say that I didn't fancy Gyokeres at all to come in. I just think that there's more potential risk factor with the signing of his ilk from Portugal at 27 years of age with that price tag. There's a lot of pressure and a lot to deliver, but he's got the quality to be able to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but it was said that Sesko's team were asking for a release clause, which made Arsenal a bit twitchy. If you,
I didn't hear that personally.
You should have. I think I might have started that.
No, it's all Nick's fault.
No, I didn't start it. It was just something I heard. It sounded quite plausible. And Arsenal, well, if you're looking to use us as a stepping stone to Madrid or another club, then that's not sort of the profile. And as you said, the price was getting sort of silly, and Gyokeres is sort of a mature sort of player. And people who say he can't play in English football, I saw a clip of a goal he scored for Coventry against Millwall, which is maybe a sort of Portugal sort of standard football, but it was a hell of a sort of turn and a right foot goal. So
one against Sunderland as well was also very good.
There you go.
The rounds,
Eze, is he still in mind as a potential target?
Yeah, he is. Definitely. He's a player that the club appreciate a lot. There's discussions of the way. The personal side of things wouldn't be an issue for Arsenal. The player would be very happy to join the club. It's just going to be about whether or not the club are willing to pay what Palace want. And what Palace would want, initially is that release clause. £67.5 million, to my knowledge, is what that release clause is, even though it can be paid, I think, relatively favourably in terms of it wouldn't have to all be as one lump sum. But Arsenal, with desires to chase other targets like Madueke, potentially pounce on an opportunity like Rodrygo later on in the window. If they commit a lot of money up front to a deal for Eze, it could potentially limit unless they successfully sell a number of players, which at the moment hasn't really taken off on the sales side of things. Very much on the incomings, but the outgoings of the likes of Vieira, Zinchenko, potentially Leo Trossard, who we've heard a few rumours about recently with Turkey, they haven't necessarily progressed. And Lokonga's another one, Reece Nelson another one. These are players that could also move on. We expect to move on this window, but there hasn't been too much movement. And some of those players, they're the type of players that you tend to expect to see moves happen for them toward the end of the window because the interest isn't initially there. They're not the priority targets for clubs. So when teams have missed out on key targets toward the end of the window, that's when they start going down their list of plan B, C, D. And that's when players with respect, like Fabio Vieira, like Sambi Lokonga, will come up more so on those lists. So it might be that Arsenal, struggle to move for other targets later in the window unless some of those sales come in. But Eze features definitely prominently in a player that they'd like to sign if they can get it for the deal that they feel is most beneficial for them.
So for a combination of either PSR or sort of squad size, does Mikel Arteta have to sell? Do Arsenal have to sell this window?
It depends how much they want to do. For the amount of business they've done already, Norgard, Zubimendi, Kepa, we expect, further negotiations for Mosquera of Valencia as well. That could be a 15 to 20 million pound deal. You've got Gyokeres, of course, which looks to be a deal upwards of 60 million pounds potentially as well. You've got Eze, Madueke, and then Rodrygo as well. So even though Arsenal had a near net zero summer in 2024, in 2023, they had a huge outlay in spending, broke records with their spending that year. And they've only really last year managed to bring in some really good money for players like Nketiah, Smith Rowe and Aaron Ramsdale. So, yes, I think to go all out this window and land some of those extra signings like a Madueke and Eze Rodrygo all together, which is not beyond the realms of possibility. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it would require a couple of decent outgoings for that to happen.
It must be exciting times for Arsenal fans. What it is, you just hear it. I live near the ground. I just hear people are getting very excited. But I remember Mikel Arteta saying to us up at the training ground towards the end of last season, I think it was the training ground, not the stadium. He said, I'm paraphrasing. He said, "Look, guys, I could sign Gyokeres, Sesko, Zubimendi, all these players that people go on to me about, but it still might not mean we win the league or anything. Football is quite a random thing. But you've been quite vocal in your disappointment, the lack of activity Arsenal in the transfer window over the last sort of few windows, certainly in the striker mould. I'm assuming you're a bit more encouraged. And where do you think this window is moving towards, leaving Arsenal going into next season?
Yeah, I set out this window and I said that anything lower than a 9 out of 10 window for me is not good enough for the season that Arsenal need this year. I felt that the 2024 window really didn't meet expectation. They were short, they lacked depth, they lacked, that centre-forward signing. I think they lacked an extra midfield signing. I think they lacked a potential defensive reinforcement. And the injuries to key players exposed those problems. And in January, to not sign anybody, even when those needs were even more glaring, I thought was an even bigger failure. So there was a lot of pressure, I think, in this window. But so far, the proactiveness of the club and how early they've managed to get business done and the work that Andrea Berta is doing and the different approach to the window in which he's taken, I think has put Arsenal into a really good position. So that if Arsenal, hypothetically, on top of your Zubimendi, your Norgard, your Mosquera, your Kepa, were to add Gyokeres, Eze, Madueke, you're looking at a 9 out of 10 window there. Add Rodrygo to that, and it's easily a 10 out of 10 window. So, yeah, there's potential here for Arsenal to pull off a very special, perhaps the best ever window in their entire history this year. And that's an exciting prospect that I, for one, sincerely hope obviously takes place.
Just to quickly touch on Max Dowman. Where do you expect him in terms of the Arsenal squad, first team squad next season? Is he going to be in the picture in the squad consistently?
I think a lot will depend upon what happens in pre-season. There is an expectation that he'll be part of the squads that go to Asia and play in Singapore. It's our first year where we can see him play senior games. Last year, even though Mikel Arteta spoke very openly about a player that, due to legislation, could not play for Arsenal because of his age. People will say, well, Ethan Nwaneri played when he was 15, but it's the year in which you turn 16 that you are able to actually play in in a league like the Premier League or, of course, a competition like the Champions League. So, yeah, Max Dowman, there is an expectation he'll be part of that pre-season squad, and his performances, if and when they come in the pre-season games, will determine, of course, how much exposure he gets early in the season. But I think the longer the season goes on, he'll get more opportunities. Those League Cup games will be opportunities. The latter stages of some Champions League games, I imagine, will be opportunities. If Arsenal are winning comfortably in matches, he'll get exposure there. Mikel Arteta rates Max Dowman incredibly highly. I've asked him about completely unrelated things in press conferences, and he's brought Max Dowman's name up unprompted. So, he's a player that Arteta clearly has a lot of appreciation for. And, there is an excitement that grows amongst these players, but we have been there before with players. I remember, players like Charlie Patino, coming through, and there's been a swell of excitement around them, and it's not worked out. So it's important, I think, for people to stay on the ground. You can be excited, but wait till we see kind of what goes down before building something up. And ultimately, it doesn't lead where we want it to. But there's a lot of hope around Max Dowman, that's for sure.
Thank you, Tom. And as Nick mentioned earlier, you can catch Tom on the Gooner Talk TV every morning at 8 o'clock on YouTube and other various social media platforms, and also on Football London. Stay tuned to all its brilliant Arsenal coverage. This Haters TV production is brought to you by Retro Football Manager. We have an end video for you to watch, so please watch that. And the links are in the description too. Tom, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Haters TV is delighted to be working in partnership with Retro Football Manager, a fast-growing retro-themed football management app with over 120,000 active users. Dive into over 200-plus seasons, many with multiple divisions, and relive football history. You can manage the club you support and lead them to glory. Compete with other managers on individual and club leaderboards to find the very best online football managers. Pick any era, manage legendary teams and players, and lead your club to victory. It's absolutely fantastic. All the relevant info and download links are in the description below.